Alright, so welcome to my channel. I've I've always wanted to say that, but I wanted the mic to sound like it's right in your ear. So this mic is officially my first investment into the channel, and it's the first time I'm spending time and money. I've got the pop filter that every podcaster uses, and this, I don't know what you call it, like the condom-esque contraption, for lack of a better term. So there's no going back. I've spent money and I'm not fucking leaving. Plus I like good tech and it just looks quite cool. But anyway, this video isn't about the mic or my current setup. This video is about how I spent 8 weeks in China. Even when I think about it now, it still feels insane that I actually spent 2.5 months there. So I went to China for 8 weeks. So this video is about when I went to China in the summer of 2018. I went for an internship at a tech startup company, and I'll probably talk about the actual work experience in a different video because it was interesting to say the least. But more specifically, the internship was in Shenzhen, and Shenzhen is considered like China's Silicon Valley, and it's their like tech hub. I find it interesting because Shenzhen and Hong Kong are essentially a river away from each other. That this one river that separates two very different political systems and two very different cultures would impact my experience in China so much. So after a very difficult journey of getting my China visa in the first place, I went to China. So my travel to Shenzhen included a flight to Hong Kong and then a boat ride across from Hong Kong to Shenzhen. So after my ride from Hong Kong to Shenzhen, I arrived at my apartment, which was sort of like a hotel apartment kind of set up. After arriving, I unpacked, I set up my room the way I wanted to for my stay, and I set up the sort of living room situation. So me and my flatmate decided that we needed to get some supplies for our stay here because obviously we needed some food and shit. So we were redirected to a Walmart. Let's just say that this is probably one of my favorite places that I spent a lot of time in. When I say this place sold everything, I mean they sold everything. I'm going to include some videos now, so just have a look.
Crayfish?
They're alive,
Crayfish, bro. They smell that life. Oh my god.
1 2 1 2 3 4 le C.
So for starters, as soon as you enter the place, you realize how crowded China is, because that store was so huge, yet it was so busy. So the live fish that you saw in the videos in Walmart were actually set up for us to actually scoop out the water. So because I wasn't used to anything like that in the local Sainsbury's and Tesco's that I shop in here, it was just so insane to see other people actually sort of like decide amongst themselves, discuss, and then catch the fish in the like huge fish tank. It was disgusting and beautiful at the same time. So obviously, as foreigners, we can't read a word of Mandarin. So we're just shopping the way my parents do, and we just try to look at every single picture that we can and decide whether the gamble was worth it. So it would be like a picture of an ice cream flavor or a picture of the 100 different kinds of soya sauces in the aisles. Now, for anyone that knows me knows that I love fruit, and boy, China did not disappoint me. So if you imagine a classic fruit and veg market in England, very good, £1 fish. The Walmart basically had a huge section like that where you'd have women at each stall cutting up fresh fruit and packaging it in some sort of like cling film sort of plate. These plates were so cheap, and because I love fruit, I ended up spending I think like £100 over my 8-week stay on just fruit alone. And in one of those stalls, I found a fruit that basically entered my top 3 fruits of all time straight away, and that's the purple dragon fruit. Usually dragon fruit is white on the inside, and I've only ever seen pictures of them, so I'd never actually tasted them before going there. And when I tell you I was addicted is an understatement. So addicted, in fact, that I don't know if I should say this, but if you're easily grossed out, skip to a later part in the video. So one day before work, I went to empty out last night's meal, and just before flushing, I noticed that the colour was all the way off, and it just looked so wrong. Looking at it, you'd think I just shut out a part of my small intestine. I was just so confused and genuinely taken aback by the crime scene that I just witnessed, and I just didn't want to leave the toilet until I figured out what the fuck came out of my body. Like, what the fuck did I just produce? So I tried to retrace my steps, and I just thought about, like, I racked my brain about what I ate that night, and it clicked. This color looks... No. Turns out that the substance that provides the color of the purple dragon fruit can't be digested by us, and therefore it results in a purple colored stool. Normally that will put people off of eating the fruit because they don't want to see that monstrosity ever again. But me being me, I spent the rest of my time in China with purple colored shit. When you travel, ideally, for me at least, you just want to blend into the crowd and go about your travels unnoticed without people acknowledging that you're a foreigner. Even though it's pretty much hard for me to do that anyway because of the turban. But because I was a foreigner, China basically told me I was a foreigner and reminded me that I was a foreigner. They knew I weren't from these ends. You're not from around here, are ya? So everywhere we went out as a group, we stood out like the sorest thumbs. Stood out like the purplest of stools. Everywhere we went, we attracted genuine stares and curiosity. At one point, I specifically remember ordering McDonald's, and the woman at the cashier was so speechless and like she was so moved by what she just saw. When I was standing in front of her, she genuinely zoned out for 30 seconds while serving me. It was as if like she was deep in thought, or maybe she just got lost in my eyes. But no, on a serious note, when you grow up in London, you don't realise how crowded London is because, I don't know, it's just your reality. When I went to Bristol for university, I realised how busy and relentless London is. But fuck me, China makes London looks like fucking Grimsby. If you hate crowds, you will hate China. Because in China, you basically essentially always walk in a crowd with people that you don't know. And when you're walking along the tight pavements, you're sort of like moving with people. It would be as if you're like clubbing with them because they're all sweaty right next to you, hot, tightly packed together. Speaking of clubs, the nightlife was so fascinating. I remember one night we went to the city centre, and again, picture yourself walking through like a market or a small like mall, and in this mental image that you have right now, replace all of those little stalls and shops that you can imagine with clubs. So it was a marketplace but for clubs.
I don't even know, like this.
So imagine now you're walking through this marketplace of clubs and people are stumbling from club to club because they're fucking drunk. And honestly, it was just so amazing to see because like the place was so alive. And speaking of stumbling, I feel like Chinese people don't handle their liquor very well because at least every night there'd be at least 4 people being dragged out of the club like corpses, like genuinely bouncers would drag them out through the middle of the club. And one night even my friend had to fling a complete stranger over his shoulder and take her outside of the club because she'd basically passed out, and the way she thanked him was basically to vomit all over his clothes. But Shenzhen as a city is basically London on steroids in terms of how fast paced, how crowded and how busy the city actually is, and therefore your life is actually so busy. In all of that fast-paced hectic life of Shenzhen, I found a park, and it just, I don't know, it just feels like it reminded me of how lucky I was to be where I am and how lucky I am to be able to explore the world the way I am. So I feel like I should just include this clip because it was just so peaceful. There's so much more I want to say about Shenzhen, but otherwise this video might be an hour. Now for the next bit, I want to talk about one particular weekend we took out of our time to travel. For one of the weekends, we were recommended to go to a small village in China towards China's Midlands, and it probably is hands down my favourite part about the whole China trip. So when I mentioned that China makes you feel foreign, hold on to that thought. On the train journey there, I was so sleepy because we had woken up very early and we had to catch the early train. So I was in a weird state in between consciousness and sleepiness. So whilst on the train, I just remember a tap on my shoulder while my eyes were closed, like something like that. Here's me thinking that is some inspector, because obviously that's what I'm used to. But instead, it was a little kid with a small packet of biscuits. Now my initial reaction is that this is very, very, very suspect, because my inner Londoner just doesn't let me see the cuteness of the situation. But then came more kids with even more food. They started offering me like cooked noodles to biscuits to snacks. The pure excitement on their face was just fucking cute. And I look over my shoulder and I realised that the kids' parents were actually edging the kids on to come and speak to us because we were foreign and we just looked so different. Here's a little clip of like what I managed to capture of them.
Hello, 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 hello.
Man, it was so fucking cute. If you start to imagine, like, there's a billion people in China. Most Chinese people haven't seen anyone foreign other than maybe potentially video. And here we are on a train, one Sikh guy, one black guy, one mixed race guy, 5 white people. Now, although I spoke about Shenzhen being crazy, the lifestyle was still somewhat similar because it was a big city and there was a certain familiarity with living in a big city and a crowded city. But as soon as we reached Guilin, I instantly felt like the peace and the tranquility and like the cleaner air. And it was just one of the places that you could feel the beauty, and you can just tell that life is just simpler in certain areas of the world. So on our first day there, we went to the local food market just to get some sort of snacks for our stay there. But when I tell you, I did not expect to see what I saw there. I didn't try any of those foods in those videos, but I'm not the type of person to judge other cultures based on the things that they eat, because I know a lot of foods in cultures are influenced by their local wealth and what was accessible to survive in the area. But I did want to try something that I had never considered eating before. So then I found this.
I don't care about dogs, but crocodiles.
You're gonna learn today.
Now that is a crocodile, and I ate it. And I'd do it again. The crocodile was so fucking nice. It was seasoned well and was juicy, and I would 100% recommend anyone to try it out if they haven't. If it's any consolation, it tasted exactly basically like chicken. Funnily enough, when I told my mom that I tried crocodile, I think she genuinely screamed in disgust and she gave me the look as if she wanted to disown me. She can add that to the list of other things that she wants to disown me for. On one of the nights, we wanted to experience the nightlife in the local village. We thought that it wouldn't be as lively or as energetic as maybe Shenzhen was, purely because of how small this village was in comparison to Shenzhen. But I think I had like the wildest experience in this village during the nightlife. Turns out the city came alive at night. I was just smiling constantly at how vibesy the place was.
Fucking insane.
So after exploring the town centre at night, we get back to a hostel that we were staying at, and we collectively agreed that we wanted to try out a club. And remember again when I told you that China makes you feel foreign? This time, we were treated like fucking kings. Now picture this. Whilst we were in the middle of talking, having a conversation, drinking a little bit, randomly, a few guys in the booth behind us sort of ushered us over to come over here. They were being friendly, so we followed suit and we got to their booth. Suddenly they just started to offer us all kinds of alcohol, shisha, food, fruits, and essentially it was all for free. Me being me, I'm not gonna deny free food. We were all drunk and tipsy from all the free alcohol that we got, and we began to walk back to the hostel. But when a group of drunk people walk together, it doesn't just result in a simple walk home. One of my friends felt so damn energetic at this point that, you know when you walk down the street and you see like the shop signboard sticking outside of the main shop banner? My friend thought it would be a fun idea to jump as high as he could and basically hit every signboard that he passed. And bearing in mind, we were walking down at like 5 AM and the streets were dead silent. So every time he saw a signboard, he would jump up and hit it. So he kept this up on the walk back home. But for one of the signboards, he drunkenly just slaps it so hard, what must have been like with so much force, and the glass sign just collapsed down and shattered into pieces. I was so shocked about what just happened, and I think I sobered up in the time that the glass was hit and the glass hit the floor. And now we were all like, oh shit, what the fuck do we do now? Turns out things turned bad to worse because the streets that we thought were silent and empty were not. So out of the shadows immediately comes out a security guard that was apparently patrolling the streets and starts screaming at the top of his lungs. And bear in mind, what pans out isn't probably one of my proudest moments, but yeah. So if I start to paint the picture for you, the guard comes over to us. He starts shouting us in Mandarin. We reply in English. He shouts at us in Mandarin. We reply in English. And the problem in this scenario is that none of us knew Mandarin, and he only knew Mandarin. He kept continuing to shout. We were trying to calm the situation down, but with gestures and whatever we could. But obviously it was going nowhere, so we had like a 5-minute back and forth of English versus Mandarin, English versus Mandarin, English versus Mandarin. We weren't even on the same dictionary, let alone the same page. So in the midst of all of this now, my friend that broke the sign slowly reaches for his pocket, and I notice it. Turns out what he was going for was his wallet. He slowly turns to us and says, alright, this is clearly not going anywhere. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a lot of money on the floor, which will hopefully cover the cost of this signboard. And we're just going to run for it. He didn't even give a moment for anyone to discuss the plan and whether we actually were on board with it. And I remember that moment so vividly because it was in such slow motion in my head. I remember going from shock to a full sprint within like 0.2 seconds. And I'm just... Now we were in a foreign country running away from security guards. So now this is where it gets blurry in my head because all I can remember is me breathing heavily, loud voices in Mandarin behind me. So I don't stop running until those voices sort of fade out. So after the voices gets drowned out and I lose the guards, I slowly make my way back to the hostel, and eventually so do the others. Except the guy that actually broke the sign and threw the money down on the floor. So now we're all starting to get worried because it's been like 40 minutes and he's not back yet, and we're just thinking the worst. He's caught, he's in jail, he's getting tortured, I don't know, he might be in handcuffs. So now we're all like, fuck, we actually just need to go to find him. So we all start to leave the hotel now, and literally as we turn left and exit the hotel, we see like a figure in the distance. Turns out he's limping back to the hostel. So he filled us in as to what happened, and turns out that he sprinted so fast away from the security guard, he lost them very quickly, but he rolled his ankle on the curb and spent most of his time hiding in pain, consequently limped back to the apartments slowly but surely. No, that was a crazy fucking night. When I think about my experience in China, I think back at it so fondly. I would 100% go back and meet some of the people that I already met there. This video was my attempt to try paint the picture of what China is like and my experience being in China as a brown boy. But when I say that, I don't think the video can do any experience justice, so I would 100% recommend that if you do get the chance to go out there for an extended period, do so. Because I feel like my outlook on life, genuinely when I say that my outlook on life sort of was tweaked a little after that trip. And I just wish I was a YouTuber back then, because I feel like I would have recorded much more of my time out there, because I'm not a picture person or a vlogger in general, but if I was to do YouTube, I would be able to paint a much better picture rather than like presenting you guys with images and short little clips that I recorded on Snapchat. But all in all, I loved my time at China and I would 100% go there. I just wish the food was a little bit better. I will definitely make a part 2 to this because I actually enjoyed even writing the sort of agenda for this video. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you managed to like vicariously live my experience through this video. Anyways, now that I'm done, you can go back to whatever you're doing before. Actually, I've got other videos. Give them a watch. Peace.